I give the floor by video Alison Afshari, Madam Alison Afshari, our look at the aspect of discrimination and racism in Iran against minority nation. Please.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. In this meeting, I'm delighted to have been given the honour to speak to you today about some overlooked aspects of discrimination and racism towards minorities in Iran, with a focus on Azerbaijani Turks. The academic year in Iran commenced yesterday, with the Iranian authorities recurrently inflicting child abuse by coercing the children of some 60 million members of minority nations to receive education in a language other than their mother tongue. The right to education in the mother language embodies the relationship of minority nations to their rights and the mindset, driven by racism, of the Iranian authorities to deprive them. Iranian authorities do this by concealing the impact through a disingenuous discourse. For instance, through the use of Iranian as a cultural label, the impacts of a mother tongue deprived education and the role of racism are not even considered for discussion. However, the learning from social science on racism and the right to education in the mother language is, unsurprisingly, enshrined in the appropriate UN principles, resolutions and conventions. The subsequent UN mandates are yet to bear fruit in protecting Azerbaijanis in Iran and the other minority nations. Racism's nature relegates a group of people to inferior status and treats them according to unfounded beliefs about fictitious inferiority or subsequent unjust treatments and oppression. The brand of racism in Iran has always been pervasive, intentional, conscious, often explicit and sometimes sadistic. It is embedded in and throughout systems, laws, written or unwritten policies, entrenched practices, entrenched norms, policies and established attitudes. These are the visible sides of the iceberg of the brand of racism in Iran. But what about the invisible? Exposing discrimination and racism is a universal goal by Azerbaijani activists, but Iranian authorities and oppositions label them as pan-Turkists or separatists. They isolate these activists in every possible way, including undermining their employment, suffocating their aspirations, and ensuring that the conditions for every normal activity of modern life are adversely affected. Every Azerbaijani knows that Iranian authorities are most disingenuous towards Azerbaijanis and most enthusiastic to conspire against them. With that in mind, let us outline some of the invisible or overlooked aspects of racism in Iran. Firstly, speaking unaccented Farsi has become a standard by which to disadvantage the minority nations. So, Azerbaijanis have been made permanently vulnerable, being pressurised into abandoning their language of discourse in society if they are not to be alienated from every opportunity. Secondly, Iranian authorities crafted a policy requiring a sufficient ability in Farsi as a prerequisite to school starters. Azerbaijanis held this as a racist policy and ArcDH campaigned hard against it. Therefore, it was put on a back burner, however, without being cancelled. Now the same individuals have been brought to the Ministry of Education under President Pezeshkian, raising many questions. A third overlooked aspect is the power structure in Iran and the culture of blame. The racist discourse in Iran holds the Turks in Iran to be responsible for all problems, even extending this to the supreme leader, who is Azerbaijani. To escape blame and be accepted by the thoroughly Persian state, the coerced default for most people is to deny their Azerbaijani Turkish identity. Even Khamenei, the supreme leader, explicitly claims that he is ethnically Persian. Another issue is that there is no media in Azerbaijani Turkish. A few hours given in state radio and television use a Creole language invented by the Iranian authorities. ArcDH also sees a further matter of concern in the Tabriz Chamber of Commerce, Industries, Mines and Agriculture, which is mandated to promote investments in Tabriz and Azerbaijan, but actually acts as an agent for investments in Isfahan. They even steer Azerbaijani investors to Isfahan by giving them incentives. Similarly, the package of economic discrimination against Azerbaijanis includes various discriminatory practices. There is substantial relocation of Azerbaijani heavy industry to the Persian provinces, and upper management is replaced with non-Azerbaijanis. In numerous Azerbaijani minefields, native workers are rarely employed in favour of immigrant miners. These mines bring massive hard cash to Iranian authorities, but disaster to the Azerbaijani environment. An example of environmental disaster is the desiccation of Lake Urmiye, which is the direct result of malpractice. The Iranian authorities inflict permanent damage to the social fabric of the minority nation of Azerbaijan, draining the area of its best and brightest in a brain drain. Finally, Iranian football is not limited to channeling all the budget to a few Persian teams favoured by the government, but also suffers the flagrant discrimination of racism in Iran. Iranian football fans chant blatant swear words which are broadcast at prime times on national television. It is commonplace for the referees to be biased against the Azerbaijani national teams of football in Tabriz and the basketball team of Urmiye, and match results are fixed in favour of non-Azerbaijani teams through bribing players. The list is unlimited, but this gives some overview of the overlooked aspects of discrimination and racism towards minority groups in Iran, in particular the Azerbaijani Turks. ArcDH hopes that it is not just you who is listening and has heard the call to recognise the rights of